clicked to find Curry's real prime. Good, because we're breaking it into 10 moments that flip the answer depending on what you value. Was it pure athletic pop, record-shattering shooting, or cold-blooded leadership when the stage was loudest? We're going to test all of it: numbers, rings, and control against the years that made his case. Stay through all 10, because the last two reframe how you think about peak and legacy. We'll move from fragile beginnings to era-defining dominance.
Curry will not play in at least Golden State's next 2 games after injuring his right ankle for the second time in 6 days.
Then into a different kind of greatness that doesn't live in the box score. By the end, you won't just have a date, you'll have a definition and a window. So first, we need a shared map. The prime window defined. With Steph, the working window is 2013 through 2022. That stretch holds 2 MVPs, 4 titles, a Finals MVP, and a run of All-NBA selections that stack across the era, 11 total in the resume, with the bulk of them landing inside this span. He started that window as a rising star who could pull from 28 feet and ended it as a champion who controlled tempo, angles, and matchups without needing the box score to shout. That's a lot of ground to cover for one prime, but the hardware forces the conversation. Fans are split because the evidence points in different directions. If you chase raw numbers, the case lands on 2016. If you value rings and dominance, the Durant years pull you in. If you prize command, reads, and poise on the biggest stage, 2022 wins. The debate sounds messy, but it actually maps to how his value showed up. He didn't stay the same player. He kept the same tier. A composite prime fits Curry because his role flexed, while his impact held top 5 across different builds. Early in the window, he was the offense's spark and closer. During the super team seasons, he was the off-ball engine who bent defenses before the pass. Late in the window, he became the pace setter and solver who made the right choice every time down. Injuries, teammates, and defensive trends changed. His value didn't. You can track it with his All-NBA timeline and on-off seasons. Across that 2013 to 2022 arc, he lands those double-digit All-NBA selections, which mark sustained elite status. And year after year, the team's scoring leaped when he played and sagged when he sat. Different coaches, different lineups, same story. That continuity is rare for guards his size, and it speaks to a skill set that scales: shooting gravity, decision-making, and conditioning that survives any pace. Let's nail the numbers that anchor the window. MVP years in 2015 and 2016. Titles in 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2022. Finals MVP in 2022. 11 All-NBA selections across the resume, with most clustered in this decade-long run. That's the spine. Around it sits the arc, an early burst where the three-point line turned into a runway, a middle period where his off-ball intelligence supercharged a juggernaut, and a late career mastery where he read coverages like a point guard professor. So here's how we'll handle it. We'll test the composite prime season by season and see if the value stays elite even when the box score shifts. If the answer keeps coming back yes, then Curry's prime is a range, not a dot. And every phase shows a different version of being the best. And to understand why that range exists at all, you have to start with how close it came to never opening. We start with the part nobody likes to remember, the ankles that almost closed the door. From 2009 through 2012, his right ankle kept rolling over on basic cuts and routine drives. Sprain, sit, return, sprain again. The cycle killed rhythm and confidence. He had surgery after the 2010-11 season to repair torn ligaments and stabilize the joint, then needed another procedure in April 2012 to clean out scar tissue and loose fragments. That second operation was a reset, but it also wiped momentum and raised a bigger question. Can a smaller guard with fragile ankles last in an 82-game league? The team treated him like a high-risk asset. Minutes were monitored. Back-to-backs carried extra caution. Tape and braces weren't optional, they were standard. The 2011-12 season, already shortened by the lockout, turned into a stop-start grind where every tweak felt like a step backward, and he managed just 26 games. Around the league, the whispers were predictable. Trade value, extension risk, long-term fit. Teams don't build around guards who can't stay on the floor. Rehab changed his habits. He built strength around the joint, but he also tweaked how he attacked. Less rim pressure, more pull-ups. More quick stops and starts instead of heavy plants in traffic. He leaned into deeper threes to avoid repeated collisions with bigs, widened his pickup points to shoot before the help arrived, and sharpened his off-ball routes so he could create shots without pounding the dribble. More relocation threes, more exit cuts after the pass, more work-off screens to keep defenders trailing instead of absorbing contact at the rim. That wasn't flair. That was self-preservation baked into a skill set. Golden State took a calculated swing anyway. In 2012, they locked him into a 4-year, $44 million extension. For a player with his medical file, that number looked like a hedge. If the ankle held, it would be a win. If it didn't, they weren't trapped. That belief mattered. It gave him security to train, test the ankle, and ramp his shooting volume without rushing back to prove anything night to night. There's a small moment that tells the story. Early in 2012 to 13, you could see the bulkier brace under the sock and long warm-up routines at the bench band work, balance drills, extra footwork before checking in. He'd play sharp bursts, sit for a beat, then return for another stretch. The message was clear: manage the risk, keep the ankle calm, and let the shot carry the load. All of that fragility became a blueprint. Pace to avoid grinding impacts. Spacing that turns drives into choices. A release built to fire before contact arrives. Conditioning to repeat the same routes all night. Those weak ankles forced a smarter, scalable game that aged well, and once the health steadied, the shot profile and green light started to expand. Next came a season that didn't just look better, it looked different. Call this the night the league looked different. In 2012 to 13, he finally logged a mostly healthy stretch and the team leaned into his range. The green light got brighter. His shot diet shifted from balanced to aggressive, and the volume popped while the efficiency stayed high. That balance, more attempts, same clean numbers signaled something bigger than a hot month. It suggested you could build a top offense around a guard who lived outside the arc and didn't need to live at the rim. There was still a question. Could a perimeter-first guard carry winning offense long-term? Or was he just catching teams off guard? That season became the test lab. He began to fire off the dribble threes early in the clock, pulled from well beyond the line, and still hit at a clip that made coaches squirm. He punished slow switches, ran defenders through screen mazes, and scored without hijacking the ball. That's not normal for a lead scorer, and defenses didn't have a clean answer yet. If there was a national alert, it was the 54-point game at Madison Square Garden on February 27, 2013. Same quick release, same deep range, but under bright lights with hands in his face. He went 18 for 28 from the field and 11 for 13 from three. He kept walking into rhythm pull-ups from way out and turned late clock situations into his advantage. It wasn't only the number, it was the efficiency and the degree of difficulty, and how comfortable he looked when the defense jumped his first move. Credit the coaching context too. Under Mark Jackson, the team emphasized defense and simple roles, but they also let him stretch the floor more often. The staff encouraged the increased three-point volume. That meant longer leashes on transition threes, more actions to free him off the ball, and lineups that tilted towards spacing. He got enough structure to settle in and enough freedom to hunt the shot that bent coverages. The leap shows up in the spreadsheet and in how teams guarded him. Career bests in threes made and attempted to that point. A spike in true shooting that didn't sag under the extra load. A jump and buzz around the league that put him on every scout's whiteboard. By spring, defenses started picking him up 28 to 30 feet out. Screens turned into weapons because bigs didn't want to hedge that far, and smalls couldn't navigate the traffic. His gravity made teammates open before the pass was thrown. These habits set the base for what came next: constant relocation, quicker decisions, and a tempo that stressed rotations. 2013 wasn't the prime. It was the prototype that proved the concept works. The next step was turning that prototype into an everyday engine. So what happens when the concept gets structure? MVP plus a new offense meant 2014 to 15, when Steve Kerr handed Curry a system that made every cut, every handoff, and every screen count twice. The ball moved first, the defense shifted second, and then Curry struck. Split cuts at the elbow dragged two defenders into a guessing game. Draymond took full-time center reps in key lineups, snapping passes from the top while Curry toggled between off-ball terror and late clock closer. The plan didn't boost his dribble count. It boosted the value of his steps. The tension was loud. Could a motion-heavy star win MVP without pounding the ball? He didn't post the monster isolation volume you see from classic heliocentric guards. Instead, he sprinted through exchanges, set sneaky screens, and kept the arc hot while letting the system breathe. Kerr's offense turned relocation into a weapon. Curry's touches stayed brief, but the threat lingered. Defenders had to track him through 2 or 3 actions before the shot even came. The numbers answered the doubt. He averaged 23.8 points and 7.7 assists, shot 44.3% from 3 on high volume, and led Golden State to the league's best record. The offense graded elite, and his on-off splits sat in that top-tier zone where the team's scoring jumped the moment he checked in. That's control without a monopoly on the dribble. And when the playoffs hit, the value scaled. Traps freed teammates. His gravity opened the lane. It ended with his first championship and his first MVP, a pairing that matters when you're defining a prime because it links style to results. The geometry is the key. Guards don't usually screen bigs, but Curry did, which forced switches the defense didn't want. Handoffs from Draymond hit like pick and rolls at a sprint. Curry would pass, jog a step, then bolt to the corner, only to boomerang back to the wing for a clean look. One relocation in the weak side had to choose between an open cutter or a pull-up 3. That choice kept breaking. Role players started looking like specialists because of proximity. Harrison Barnes spotted up into rhythm. Andre Iguodala slashed into space that existed because 2 defenders chased Curry over air. Bigs hesitated to help, worried about the extra pass that turned into 3 points. They kept walking into bad switches and late contests. The motion didn't dilute his star power. It multiplied it across every action. That's how a hot shooter becomes an engine and a champion at the same time. And once that version worked on a title stage, the next year tested how far the ceiling could go when the volume and difficulty climbed to extremes. Here's what the ceiling looked like when the volume and difficulty actually hit their peak. 30 points, 402 threes, and one word, unanimous. What does unanimous look like on the court? It looks like a guard averaging 30.1 a night without free throw hunting, dropping 402 threes, flirting with 50-40-90, and piloting a 73-9 machine. It looks like defenses sending 2 at half court and still getting burned. And it came with absurd efficiency for the load. 50.4% from the field, 45.4% from 3, and 90.8% at the line. The stat line is loud, but the rhythm was the giveaway. Every possession felt like a sprint into a decision, and he kept winning those races. The season starts and the volume jumps. Pull-ups from 28 to 30 feet showed up early in the clock. Teams pressed up, so he just kept moving. Handoffs into relocations, then a cut, then a flare. By the time the ball swung back, the coverage was late. He turned broken plays into practice shots because he never stopped. The box score loves the threes, but the tape shows the engine. Constant off-ball motion and conditioning that let him stack bursts all night. There are plays everyone remembers. The overtime dagger in Oklahoma City, the bang. Call that lived on every highlight. But the best part was how routine the impossible felt. He'd walk into a pull-up from the logo as if it were a mid-range. He'd dribble into a trap, give it up, and then reappear in the corner 2 seconds later for a cleaner look. Teams tried to catch him high. He used that space to break their shape before the first screen. Impact models bent around that year. Offensive box plus-minus spiked to rare air. On-off numbers sat in that zone where the team's offense jumped by double digits per 100 with him out there. That's not just hot shooting. That's a system revolving around one player's gravity and pace. Even his misses carried value because they shaped coverage the next trip. Then the finals get messy. He was playing through bumps. Cleveland tightened the screws with size and switching, and traps arrived earlier in the clock. The attention didn't dip, the touches got harder, and the series turned. That result complicates the peak talk for a lot of fans. If the best season ends without the trophy, does it still count as the top? Here's the debate in plain terms. If you value physical sharpness and scoring output, this is the apex. Best conditioning, quickest release, wildest shot diet, and the numbers to back it. If you weigh rings first, the ending nags at you. Even after all that, 2016 stands as the physical and scoring prime. The next test was keeping that same engine humming when another MVP entered the room. Sharing the stage, owning the system starts with a simple pivot. In 2016-17, Durant arrives, and the raw shot count dips. But the offense turns into a riddle with no answer. Curry's usage slides, his efficiency climbs, and the spacing stretches so wide that help defenders stop taking steps. They just point and hope. He keeps the same pace, same cutting, same relocation, but now every cut opens a runway for Durant, and every screen flips a matchup the defense doesn't want. Fans are quick to label rolls by shot totals. Was he 1B now? Or the same 1A with fewer touches? Watch how possessions start. Curry screens first action, drags 2, slips out, and the ball snaps to Durant at the nail against a single. Next trip, they switch it, and he becomes the release valve, catching on the move for a catch-and-shoot 3 that lands before the big can raise an arm. The numbers line up with the eye test. His true shooting bumps back into elite territory, living in the mid-60s across the run. His catch-and-shoot percentages stay scorching, and the two-man lineups with Durant post net ratings that look like video game sliders. The role shift is simple in theory and brutal in practice. More off-ball gravity, more flare screens, more ghost screens to force confusion. He chases doubles on purpose to free Durant's mid-post, then backcuts the overplay for layups. When teams trap Durant, the swing finds Curry, who is already set. That's the loop. Same motion, cleaner reads, less dribble. The result? Fewer touches per possession but more value per touch, and true shooting that stays elite even as the box score quiets. Everyone remembers the closing group that broke series open, the so-called Hamptons. 5 minutes stack-stop score, stop runs until timeouts pile up. With both stars on, the margin per 100 possessions explodes. You can't sell out on Curry's pull-up because Durant punishes single coverage. You can't load 2 to Durant because the ball flips back to Curry and the shot is up in half a second. Across 2017 and 2018, that pressure translated into rings. Leadership shows up in small things. Curry sets screens on bigs, accepts being a decoy for 5 trips, then attacks the crack when coverage relaxes. He relocates without asking for the ball and hunts doubles to give Durant cleaner looks. That tone spreads. Role players cut harder, swing faster, and live off the chaos. The usage charts may drop, but the possession quality spikes. 2 titles in 3 years confirm the model. The box score quiets, the value doesn't. Those seasons prove a lead-by-gravity prime is real, and sometimes it's louder in spacing than in points. And when that balance got disrupted later, you could see what this engine looked like without insulation. When the stars thinned out, the job got heavier. Carrying weight. When the room got thin starts the moment injuries hit the roster in 2018-19. Durant missed big chunks of the playoffs, and Curry's volume spiked. The offense shifted back onto his shoulders, and every trip turned into a decision tree built around his movement. He had to start more sets, finish more sets, and still do the in-between work that keeps teammates alive when the shot isn't there. Could his style scale without another MVP beside him? That was the test. The Portland series became the clearest answer. They threw heavy traps at half court, and he kept beating it with simple counters. Give it up early, sprint through a pin-in, pop to the wing, and cash the return pass before the help rotates. He strung together big runs off relocation buckets. Once the Blazers overplayed, he slipped backdoor, or he dragged 2 to open a layup for a cutter. The box score approved, but the tape showed the process: tempo, reads, and constant motion. Then the finals against Toronto tightened the vice. Box and 1 looks, 2 on the ball, and long defenders sitting in his space. His workload ballooned. He had to handle, screen, and space many times in the same possession. The efficiency swung under that pressure, but he still created clean chances by leaning on quick give-and-go actions and short burst-off dribble handoffs. It was more grind than glow, but the creation was there. Context matters. Fatigue stacked across the roster. Key pieces dealt with injuries, which forced lineups that couldn't always punish aggressive coverages. Even after all that, Curry kept them in striking distance by turning early traps into advantage plays. The ball would leave his hands fast, then he'd relocate for a second touch that arrived before Toronto's length could reset. That's how a perimeter engine survives when the help isn't there. The impact goes beyond the scoreboard. Those reps proved he can be a solo offensive engine deep into May and June. He processed traps quicker, trusted the early pass more, and picked spots to attack in transition when defenses weren't set. The learning stuck. The 2019 Finals loss, while disappointing, served as a crucial learning experience for Curry, demonstrating his ability to perform at a high level even when facing intense defensive scrutiny and increased offensive responsibility. This experience was crucial for his later leadership prime, as it proved his ability to carry a team's offense even without the support of another superstar like Durant. The season ended with lessons and mileage. The next challenge wasn't about coverages. It was time. Could that prime hold if the calendar took a chunk away? A pause came instead, and not the kind you plan for. A pause button on momentum hit with the broken hand in 2019-20. He appeared in only 5 games. The Warriors sank to the bottom, and the season turned into rehab footage and box scores that didn't matter. For a small guard in his 30s, that kind of stall invites every doubt. Was the body starting to slow? Would the rhythm come back without live reps? And did the organization even have the pieces to make his minutes count again? There were reasons to think the pause had upside. The hand injury was painful but clean to manage long-term, without the chronic flags that shadow ankles and knees. Rest meant ankles, core, and conditioning could get a full rebuild. Time off the calendar meant hours to study how defenses had tilted toward high traps, pre-rotations, and box-and-one looks. With real games out of reach, the staff could map counters on the whiteboard without forcing them into live possessions. He got a chance to load base strength, sharpen balance, and drill the movement patterns that support all that off-ball sprinting. Team context made the present rough but the future flexible. Roster turnover brought in youth and fringe rotation pieces who needed touches to grow. The year functioned like a lab. Coaches tested screening angles, spacing templates, and rhythm shots for role players who might stick. They just needed Curry back to see which parts actually worked. Practice reports during recovery mentioned heavy conditioning, long shooting blocks, and high-volume reps to rebuild touch and timing. Nothing flashy, steady, and targeted. Still, the unknown hovered. Age doesn't wait. Missing most of a year steals timing, and timing is his edge. The league kept moving. New stars rose, defenses copied the most aggressive coverages, and the margin for error for a smaller guard got thinner. Fans split on the timeline. Some saw the layoff as wear and tear avoided. Others saw a window starting to slide. The answer showed up in how he returned. The time away didn't blunt the tools, it sharpened them. There was more lift late in games, tighter footwork on sudden stops, and cleaner mechanics under pressure. The decision speed looked fresher, not rusty. The off-ball engine revved faster because the base was stronger. The lost season worked like a runway, not a cliff. And once he was cleared, the next stretch offered a clean test of what survived the pause. Could he drive elite offense when attention never left him and the roster asked for volume every night? So the next snapshot is the scoring title with the whole league leaning his way. 32. A night with everyone watching the help meant 2020-21, and it was a thought experiment in plain sight. 32 a night on a roster that ran thin, while defenses sent a second defender before he crossed the logo. Night after night, the game plan screamed the same thing: get the ball out of his hands. He still found 30+ with a shot diet most players wouldn't try once a week. That's where the debate gets loud. On one side, MVP-level offense by any measure. On the other, a play and exit that undercuts the headline for some fans. How do you grade it? You can't ignore the context. He faced top-blocking and high traps on basic actions, often with no elite secondary star to punish those choices. Teams lived with anybody else taking the shot. He lived with hitting tough ones anyway. The 62 against Portland set the tone. Drop coverage became a mistake in one quarter. He went 18 for 31 from the field, 8 for 16 from 3, and didn't need foul baiting to stack points. From there, he kept stacking month-long heaters where help defenders stood at his hip and still arrived late. It wasn't a one-off. It was the template for the year. Give it up early, sprint into a handoff, get it back, and fire before the second body gets set. He repeated that sequence until coaches started trapping on inbounds. Efficiency matters here. Even with the load and the late clock bailouts, he kept elite efficiency. 48% from the field, 42% from 3 on huge volume, 92% at the line, and a true shooting percentage up in the mid-60s. No Durant, no Clay. The spacing had gaps, so he toggled between on-ball creation and off-ball hunting based on who shared the floor. With bench-heavy units, he leaned into pick-and-rolls and snaked into pull-ups. With better cutters, he played catch-and-shoot off pin-downs and ghost screens. Impact metrics stayed bright even on a middling team. On-off splits showed the offense spiking when he played and sagging when he sat. That's the mark you look for when judging whether numbers are empty. His drives generated kickouts. His gravity juiced back cuts. and his threes forced teams to guard 30 feet from the rim even on cold stretches. The box score explained the volume. The film explained why it mattered. All of it built toward a different test. Could that level of shot-making and attention transform back into control when the roster finally had balance? The answer would hinge less on fireworks and more on command, how a veteran star closes series by solving coverages without speeding up. Which chapter captures that? Finals MVP and the leadership peak is 2021 to 2022, when the run ends with the trophy and his first Finals MVP at age 33 turning 34. And the case isn't built on flashy season-long counting stats. It's built on control. He set the pace, chose when to hit the gas, and kept Boston's defense chasing shadows while the numbers stayed clean enough to hold up under slow-motion replay. The tension is simple. If you chase raw totals, this season won't win the argument. If you grade command, this one keeps showing up. Boston threw length, switches, and help off the nail. He answered with patient footwork and better shot selection. He didn't hunt contact for whistles. He hunted the next mistake. That's maturity, not volume. And it came with age context that matters. A small guard winning Finals MVP in his mid-30s, after a decade of scouting attention. Game 4 in Boston is the snapshot. 43 on the road with late clock pull-ups and inside finishes that came off counters, not reckless drives. He went 14 for 26 from the field, 7 for 14 from 3, 8 for 9 at the line, and added double-digit boards. They top-locked him off the ball, so he flipped the route and used tight curls into space. They switched bigs onto him, so he went to pace changes hesitation, retreat dribble, then rise before the help slid over. When the trap came early, he leaned on simple passes, then relocated for second touches that beat the rotation by a step. Steady decisions, same result. Across the series, he averaged north of 31 a night with efficient splits under heavy attention, including 49% on twos and 43% from deep on high volume, while the live dribble turnovers stayed in check. Around him, the group needed a steady hand. Jordan Poole's burst scoring, Andrew Wiggins' cutting and defense, and role players who lived off his movement all had to sync. He ran the offense like a relay. Start the action, move the defenders, let the ball breathe, then close the possession when the shot clock asked for it. That balance only works if your best player keeps everyone on time. Defensively, he showed better positioning and a real rebounding focus for his size. He slid into help, tagged cutters, and boxed out when switching put him on bigger bodies. Fewer gambles, more solid plays. Those quiet possessions matter in a tight series against a team that wins with physicality. All the past lessons protecting the body, motion offense reps, solo engine work blended here. The mini payoff is clear. 2022 stands as the leadership and championship prime, a different kind of peak defined by control and adaptability. Now the question becomes which version you value most when you stamp the word prime. So let's set the terms cleanly and talk about what you value. Numbers, rings, or control. If you had to stamp one moment as the prime, which one gets it? You've got three clear candidates staring at you. The 2016 statistical surge that broke scoreboards, the 2017-18 run where he powered a dynasty from the shadows, and the 2022 version that won by solving problems faster than defenses could pose them. Different criteria, different answers. This is where fans talk past each other. If your checklist starts with physical pop and records, 2016 jumps to the front. That year gave you peak lift in the legs, the fastest release, the wildest shot diet, and volume that held up to efficiency math. If you care more about team dominance and an optimized role inside a near-perfect roster, you land on the Durant era. The offense reached a state where each cut from him was worth more than another team's isolation. If your metric is mastery under pressure, the 2022 run wins. Fewer mistakes, steadier counters, smarter possessions. Add his perspective. Over time, he talked about the game slowing down as reads stacked up and coverages became predictable. IQ and experience changed the way he attacked. He didn't always need the hardest shot. He needed the right one at the right time. That lens pushes you toward the later window, where he controlled pace and avoided empty trips. To frame it, think about other multi-peak legends. LeBron had the Miami-era athletic boom, the 2016 two-way command, and the Lakers stretch that leaned on processing and size. Jordan's late Bulls years showed full control without chasing nightly fireworks. Kareem rebuilt himself from skyhook centerpiece to longevity machine. Their primes don't sit on one date. They shift as roles and teammates change. You also have to account for injuries, roster context, and role changes as variables, not excuses. Ankles early shifted him from rim pressure to deep volume. Durant's arrival cut shot totals but boosted efficiency and team leverage. Later years demanded more patience and defensive accountability. The through line is impact. The box score moved. The winning influence didn't. Here's the useful upgrade to the usual one-season debate. Treat it as a composite prime. Use different peaks for different goals. You want the most fear in a regular season? 2016. You want the strongest team force that crushes playoff series by layers of spacing and decision-making? 2017-18. You want the version that wins chess matches in June when counters decide titles? 2022. So the payoff isn't a date. It's a window, 2013 through 2022, with 2016 for the stats, 2017-18 for dynasty force, and 2022 for championship leadership. Set your criteria first, then argue it, because your definition steers the answer and sets up how you'll judge what comes next. Curry's prime isn't one spike, it's a layered arc. 2016 broke math with volume and efficiency. 2017-18 broke teams by turning spacing and timing into a cheat code. 2022 broke doubt because the series slowed and he still chose the right answer every trip. That range is the point. Drop your definition of prime in the comments and tag the season that fits. It's stats, rings, or leadership. If you're using the 2013 to 2022 timeline, pick your year and tell us why. If greatness is control at the highest speed, Curry hit it more than once. The real debate lives in how you score those peaks.